So in this video, we're going to discuss how do you manage a research lab so that you can be more productive and have more enjoyment. I'm Dr. Morgan Giddings from SciFoundry, where we create trainings and provide mentoring to help researchers be more productive and have more fun. In pursuing an independent research program as a professor or a similar position, at some point you will find yourself thrust into the role of manager to keep your lab and your research on track. To build a productive team in lab, you have to embrace being an effective manager, even if you don't want to. By being more effective, you avoid unnecessary problems and sidetracks. So it can seem daunting and confusing since most of us are accidental managers. Like, we didn't train to be a manager, it just happened. And it can be the kind of thing like, oh, I don't really want to deal with that. I don't want to do that. And yet by avoiding it, it causes problems. So to do a better job of managing your lab, the starting point is understanding the role or hat of a manager and where it fits in with the other three hats or roles that you need to wear. So if you don't know which hat you're wearing at any given time and you blend these hats or roles, it can lead to problems. Chaos. So understanding all four roles helps you do them better. So let's discuss what those are. The scientist and researcher role is really you're acting as an artisan of research and science focused on the details of your art. Now I know art and science often sound like very different things, but the best researchers, the best scientists are doing the art form of science, and it's important to master that. This is what you were likely trained to do in graduate school and or your MD program. It's really how to plan and perform great research. It's the core of any research lab, and therefore you really have to do it well. Without this, nothing else matters. So what the scientist and researcher does includes planning and setup of experiments. It includes recording and assessing results, data analysis, collaboration, and disseminating the results. It's all complex stuff, especially to do this really well, to bring it all together, which is why PhD and MD programs usually take 3 to 5 years or more to give the appropriate training so that you can do this stuff well. So with all of the very necessary focus on this researcher role in terms of training and just the focus once you're the head of a lab, the next three roles often get less attention and training to do them really well. So let's discuss the role of manager and operator of your research lab. The research manager and operator role includes paying attention to budgets and money. Where are the money? Where are the monies at? And being able to track them down and figure out on a spreadsheet, for example. Setting up systems and organization. Recruiting, hiring, and managing people, and keeping the team on track and really monitoring the productivity so that you know people are doing what they're supposed to and making progress, and that the overall research is making progress. It also includes interfacing with institutional bureaucracy on issues related to space, budgets, and so on. One of my least favorite things, but has to be done. Doing paperwork such as progress updates for grants and keeping track of deadlines, and a lot more. So a few tips to do it well, to do it better, is first of all, developing great organizational skills. I'm not the most organized person in the world, but the more I worked on those skills when I had that hat on, the more it helped keep things on track. Being willing to effectively direct people and hold them accountable is important, and it's tough. It's tough to hold graduate students and other people in your lab really accountable to making progress. And a lot of people overdo it or underdo it and have struggles with that. I struggled with it a lot, but it's also really important. Developing an investment return mentality when managing budgets. What that means is really differentiating from what you might be used to in managing a household budget. In a household budget, the income is relatively fixed, at least from year to year, and you have a fixed pool of money to sort of spend on stuff. Well, in a research lab, your budget is not fixed. It's expandable depending on what kind of research funding you bring in. And the kind of research funding you bring in also depends on how you have done your investing leading up to your grant proposals and things like that. You really want to invest in great people, great equipment, great techniques, and producing results that are really going to make a difference when it comes to those proposals. And then that can expand the amount of money you have to work with. So it's that expandability that is important, and really thinking about how you can invest to make that expansion happen. Setting up systems to keep things running smoothly. It can take a lot of time to set up a system, like a software system to track things or whatever, but it is really worth it in the end. So the manager role is important to keep everything on track. Let's discuss the visionary leader role. The visionary leader includes setting a clear direction for your research and lab, driving the research forward through persistence and motivation. There are inevitable challenges that are going to occur, and having that persistence and that motivation to overcome them is really important, not just for you as the lab head, but also to be able to help your team keep with the persistence and keep with the motivation. And sometimes it can seem demoralizing when you've just gotten the latest grant rejection or whatever, but getting back into that mode and bringing that persistence and motivation so that you can move forward and keep going. Setting clear values for your lab and team and holding people to them. By values, I mean really what kind of things you stand for in the research and what kind of things you say, no, those are no-goes. Those are things we don't do in our research. And doing fundraising, like grant writing. Super important, and a lot of people spend a lot of time on this. Performing outreach beyond research papers and presentations, just your basic ones, into more invited talks, into keynotes, and just paying general attention to building your brand. In other words, things like press releases, things like how your website looks and how inviting and interesting it is and informative it is, all of that kind of stuff. Networking and developing collaborations, super important. Performing duties like grant and paper reviewing, so you're seen as a contributor back to your community who might be reviewing your grants and your papers. Keeping the research clear, focused, and on track. Seeing that big picture of where the research is going and making sure that that's the place that it should be going. So some ways of doing it better, things that will enhance this. First, developing and clarifying your research vision and sharing that vision with your team. A lot of people I've worked with, when I start working with them, they don't have this clear vision. It's sort of like, well, I need to get some funding and I need to do such and such. And the lack of a clear vision really leads to a lot of confusion and chaos, not only for the leader of the lab, but for the whole team. So having that clarified vision of this is the kind of research we're going for, this is sort of how we're going to pursue that in the next few years, and this is what team I want to build to do that, and so on and so forth, can really help you stay on track. It also includes big picture planning of research directions and methods that you're going to use. And developing strong decision-making skills, especially to make those tough calls when sometimes they're needed. And as that leader, yeah, you have to do it. If you try to avoid those tough calls sometimes, then they will come back to haunt you. The decision may be made for you and probably not one that you like the outcome of. Ask me how I know. So strong delegation skills are also important. And moving beyond simple notions of time management into a focus on what's more deeply important for you as the lab leader to embrace and to do. Make sure your research program is authentic and aligned with who you are at your core. There are a lot of sort of stuff out there about leadership, especially in business, and a lot of it is very cookie cutter. A lot of it is very templated. And even in academia, the mentoring is often of the sort, I did this and it worked for me, so I think you should do the same thing. But that often leads to problems because it means it's not necessarily authentic to who you are and how you are best operating, you and your team, how you operate best in doing the research and all of these other things that you need to do. So it's really figuring out that authenticity piece. It's important. So this visionary leader role is essential to building a strong research program. Without it, it's really hard to build something that is going to really make a lot of progress. So let's talk then about the teacher and mentor role. The teacher and mentor role includes being the guide and mentor to lead your team and your field forward. Going beyond teaching duties in the classroom, really, a lot of people, including myself, would sort of go into the classroom and then come back out and take that hat off. Oh, I'm done with teaching. But really, the point here is you're never done with that teaching. You're always embracing this and doing this in sprinkling it throughout your work in building a research lab. So that includes mentoring people in your lab to succeed so that you can have more success. And it includes teaching your colleagues and your field about your work. I mentioned as the leader doing that brand work. Well, one of the best ways you can do that brand building work is teaching people in your field the importance and relevance of your research. Teaching people how to do stuff that you don't want to do in your lab so it can be more effectively delegated. This can seem like a big time investment, but it's important. Teaching reviewers and progress evaluators about the impact of your work. When you do, for example, a tenure dossier, it's really teaching the people who are the evaluators that, hey, my work has had an impact. My work is important, that kind of stuff. And lots more. There's so many places where this has an impact. So how to do it better? Well, it's really embracing that role of teaching and mentoring others outside of the classroom. It's using methods to help the people that you're teaching and mentoring to stay engaged. Really understanding that an engaged learner is an effective learner. They're going to learn more, they're going to be more interested and like you more as a result. Sprinkle the engaging teacher into your talks, manuscript, and grant proposals. And think of your job not just as getting published, but as educating the reader. It's one of the core things that I teach in grant writing classes is actually how to embrace this educating the reader role. Have patience teaching your team how to do things. So embracing the teacher-mentor role helps make the other roles work better. These are the 4 roles. In some ways, you can do them better. You may not want to do all these things, like I didn't when I started out my faculty job, but ignoring them will just force you to deal with them later. Ask me how I know about that? Well, I got into this cycle of reactivity, as I often see other people doing, where you're just putting out fires, responding to emails, responding to feedback from people who say you're not doing enough, you're not productive enough, you're this or that or the other thing. You don't want to get into that cycle of reactivity. It's much less productive than if you're proactive and really understand these hats and wear them all well. Of these roles, the manager is one of the most delegatable. That's good news. It means that as you move forward and grow your research endeavor, you can do more and more delegation of this role. However, when you're starting out, you'll have to develop the skills to do it yourself, usually early on, until you have the resources, the funding, and so on, to be able to delegate that to somebody else. And other roles, like the visionary leader, are often very difficult to delegate, if not impossible. So you really have to grow into them. And it's great if you embrace this role early on. I didn't when I started my research lab. I didn't understand really what this role was. And so it was kind of, things were more random. But I always encourage people, wherever you are in building a research endeavor, to embrace this as soon as possible and to put on that hat regularly and really think about that overall vision, that direction, the values, and so on, and to communicate that to others. So important. So if you want to build an effective and productive research endeavor, learn how to embrace each role fully. It is important to get that deeper mentoring to develop these hats in a way that's authentic to you and your team. I spoke a little bit about authenticity, that authentic way of doing things, instead of doing it in a cookie cutter way where somebody says, I did it that way, so you should do it that way. It's important to find your own way, but to have some guidance in doing that, because it's sometimes really hard to find your authenticity, because for many of us, it's been trained out of us by people telling us, do it this way, do it this way. This is the right way to do it. And we've had all this training in the quote right way, when actually the authentic way is really the right way, and we haven't been given the time or space to figure out what that is. So mentoring can really help with that. There's a lot of complexity to doing all of these 4 roles well, and to finding a way of doing that that's authentic. So if you want more help and resources for doing that and having a more effective and fun research career, visit us at scifoundry.com and sign up for your free strategy consultation. We'll dive deep with you to help identify the real roadblocks to your success and enjoyment as you build your research lab and team. Again, that's scifoundry.com. And finally, please like and subscribe for more tips on how to build a productive and fun academic research lab. This is Dr. Morgan Giddings signing off.